Hello, everyone, and welcome to Transport Talks. Um, Pedro, and with me I have Navio, all the way from Namibia. Hi, Navio, can you hear me?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Also have Emmanuel here in the UK with us. Mostly hi. Just to proceed, so today we're talking about PPP. It's a catalyst for development in urban transport in Africa. And just to set the ball rolling, I'll just give a brief definition of what I think PPP is. Then, of course, I'll open the floor to our speakers, then the audience. So I want to say to our audience, feel free to drop on the chat your name and where you're joining us from. It's an engaging and interactive discussion. So feel free to drop in your questions also, and our speakers can actually address them while speaking. So PPP is just about public and private collaboration for projects. This can take place in financing, operation, maintenance, etc. And okay, so just to set the ball rolling, we're looking at it in an African context. And for those of us that don't know, Africa is mostly the most popular mode of transport is road transport, and it's mostly characterized by informal transport, whereby you have private owners running the day-to-day activities. So open the floor to our speakers. Our first question to start the ball rolling: what is PPP? So who wants to go in first? Emmanuel, Navio, anyone is fine. So it's free. Just who wants to go in first? What's PPP?
Okay, let me go first. I think, like you said, PPP can be applied in any context, and that's something we need to recognize. It's a partnership, so that's one thing, between public and private. So think about it. Where can a public and private work together? So when we talk about private, yes, we want to recognize these are people, maybe they've got their own vested interest. They've got the need to make their money back. They're coming in because they've brought the money, and they could be very aggressive in terms of their own approach. But also think about the public. These are the organizations that are holding the trust of the people. We voted them in. We can say that they are meant to protect the interest of the people. But often things can be very slow with them. So that means you bring a slow but steady organization in partnership with a very swift and a proactive organization coming together. And that means they can work in different areas. They could work together in education, whereby they say, you know what, let me run these things for you. Private say, you know what, you've got the connection, you've got the base, let's come in and just do something for 2, 3, 5 years. So often they will have like a time plan saying, within the next 5 years, we want to do these things together. So my own understanding is about coming together for a sole purpose of getting things done, which can be in different areas. But I think for today, we think about it maybe from transportation perspective, saying, okay, it could be a road. It could be saying the government, they've got the power, they've got the law, they've got this, but often they don't have the money. So let me, as a private person, bring the money, and you give me the political will to get this done. And we sign a contract for, let's say, 25 years. You make your money, then I also make my money. So that's just the basic way I would like to describe it. Maybe I will give it to Navin. Yes.
Navin, yes, please.
Evening, guys. Thank you so much for having these talks. I'm really happy to be here on this platform, and I think just to have that engagement. So spot on. I mean, I agree so much with just the sort of foundation that you mentioned for what PPPs are. Essentially, it's an agreement, between the public and private sector. That's self-explanatory. And globally, there is no set definition of what a PPP project is. It can take various forms. There are different jurisdictions, and according to those jurisdictions, each country has really sort of come up with their own definition in terms of the law or in terms of their policies as to how they wish such an agreement can be carried out or implemented. So from what we've seen, and particularly from a Namibian perspective, the Act really defines what a public-private partnership is. So in terms of the Namibia PPP Act, it is a contractual agreement between the public and private sectors. It's for the provision of infrastructure or services. And as you mentioned, as my colleague mentioned, it can be in any sector, but the government can also sort of prioritize particular sectors where that investment or where that government method can be used. And in our case, it's for infrastructure and for services. And then, of course, you have elements such as the optimal risk sharing between those two parties. So who is able to manage what risk best? That party is allocated that risk for a particular project, and we'll get in terms of transport, what kind of risk may arise. And then, of course, as my colleague said, typically it's over a number of years, and also that really largely depends on the type of the project, the scope of the project. In the Namibian context, it can range from anywhere between 7 to 25 years. But it's typically a long-term contractual agreement so that you can spread the risk over that period of the asset's life, the whole life of the asset. And then, of course, lastly, a key element that has been incorporated under the Namibian PPP law is then that the payment to the private party for the provision of that service or infrastructure is linked to performance. So essentially, the private party comes in, and for example, on a typical toll road project, you would have the private party come in, they build the infrastructure based on their finances, they design, finance, build, operate or maintain, or it can be a different type of build, operate, transfer kind of product. But for a toll road, it can be a build, design, finance, operate, maintain, and recoup the money. And for that, then based on the availability of that toll road, the government then pays a certain fee to the user, which can be through annual payments, which are called annuity payments, or the private operator can recoup that money directly from the users of that service. So really, it depends on the context of the jurisdiction, what the law says, what the policy says, but there's no set definition. And as my colleague rightfully pointed out, the essence of it is that you have the public party, you have the private party. It's a contractual agreement. We come together to implement the project, to provide a service or an infrastructure, and risk are allocated as to who can manage that risk best. And then the benefits are shared. The service is obtained by the government, and then profits and revenues are obtained by the private. That's what I can say.
Okay, and thank you for that. I think I will come back to you, Nabil, because you prompted my next question. But I just want to put this quote by the Eighth Secretary General of the United Nations. He said, "It takes investment to see results." That means mobilizing funds from various sources. Public-private partnership are indispensable. So it's something that is not debatable. It's something that is very, very important. So Nabil, you mentioned about road infrastructure. Also something that said, according to the World Economic Forum, that Namibian roads was I think the best in Africa. Yeah, for five yeah, and also the 10th best in the world in terms of connectivity. And it also says in 2020, well, they went back to 23rd in the world, but still maintained the best in Africa. So do you think PPP had a role to play in that, or is it just like, I don't know? Yeah. Please tell our audience, just drop in your name and where you're joining us from. So Nabil, thank you. Okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So proud that you mentioned that. I am very happy to hear that this is a widely known fact. Yes, indeed, Namibia was recognized by the World Economic Forum for the past 4 consecutive years. I think you said 5, but I'm aware of 4. as the African country with the best roads in terms of quality and 10th best in the world in terms of connectivity. So the government has really invested heavily in infrastructure, transport infrastructure, specific recognizing role that the roads have to play in driving the economy, being the backbone of the economy, facilitating trade, access to employment, access to jobs, opportunities, access to markets, not only for businesses, but also for farmers. And so really the government has pushed that agenda. And in the early 2000s, even while I was still at primary school, government came up with a sector form for the transport sector, whereby they came up with a model, an institutional model that is based essentially on the user pay principle. So all of these functions in terms of road allocations, collecting of user funds, implementing road projects, the construction of the network development, the construction of roads, all of those functions were held by one ministry, the Ministry of Roads and Transport. However, with a project called MOTEC 2000, which was a project driven by the Ministry of Roads and Transport in Namibia, they then decentralized that function and essentially formed sort of public parastatals or public entities to drive the development of the transport sector. So with that, we introduced a road fund, a dedicated road fund, which is called the Road Fund of Namibia, RFA. And they are essentially a fund that is ring-fencing the road user charges that are collected. So they collect the road user charges and then they distribute them to the Roads Authority, which is sort of the implementing agency. They carry out the contracting of the consultants to design the network, and then contracting of the contractor to construct the roads as well. And then they do the project management aspect of that, as well as the network development planning. And then, of course, the ministry retained the function to sort of have the policy oversight to ensure that budget allocations, not only from road user charges that are collected by the road fund, but budget allocations that are ring-fenced or allocated through the general tax and from the fiscus of government, are then distributed correctly or budgeted, allocated correctly to the specific projects. So that is really the pinnacle of why Namibia has reached the achievement. PPPs, unfortunately, have not yet played a role in terms of transport infrastructure in Namibia, but there is a lot of potential in that area. But thus far, the PPP law was only enacted in 2017 and operationalized in 2018 with the operation of the unit, PPP unit that began. But all these developments in terms of road development really began way earlier in the year 2000. So we are a model for Africa. Other countries have looked to us and said, recently I was even contacted, we had a discussion, I think, was it last week, Friday or Thursday, where they were conducting research, reached out, listen, we need to just understand a bit more. How are you guys doing it? And I'm like, yes, my brother, come, we want to help you. We want Africa to benefit from, if our model is working. We are not saying it's perfect. By all means, it's not perfect. And all of us are facing headwinds. Particularly Namibia has been facing economic headwinds from 2015-16 that started with the drought, and then COVID just blew it out of proportion, compounded it. So resources are limited. Different sectors are competing for limited resources of government. So and the transport sector as well. So if other countries, I think it was a fellow from Ghana that contacted me. And so if Ghana can take what Namibia has done and replicate it and is able to bring up their sector also, why not? Why can we not share? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Do you want to add to
that? I think we need to recognize the fact that some of our African brothers, African countries are doing well.
That's amazing.
Yes, I think that's something I try to really emphasize in terms of place-centered approach. this is something that you might not really need to adopt a partnership that is in Europe, thinking it might work in Africa. Africa has its own unique struggles. It has its own unique problems. And I think I like that connection between the Ghanaian and the Namibian to say, okay, yes, is there something that we can learn and take away from this? Because I think it's important we recognize those infrastructural and institutional challenges when it comes to partnership in Africa. Yes, it might work everywhere else, but I think in African context, you might need to redefine what that partnership is, because you want to understand how does this benefit also even the political understatement that needs to be recognized, and also how does this satisfy the needs of the people. So I think I like that approach in recognizing that you don't just take ideas from anywhere, see how can this really be applicable in the context that we're having a conversation.
Yeah, I like what you said. Somebody once mentioned to me that why are we just looking at global transferring policies or models from the global north to the global south? Why don't we look at global south to global south transfer? That can actually work also. So, yeah, I think that's really great. So let's go. Okay, please go on.
Yeah, sorry. Contexts are very different. You know, as you rightly put it. You know, the level of resources, the income levels, poverty, unemployment, the historical context, let's not even get very political there. So yes, there are certain things that we can grab from the global north that we can say, okay, gender equality, let's push more for more women in parliament, for example, or let's push more for more women in transport. Ejiro, for example, for you, there are not a lot of female transport engineers, for example, there are not a lot of women in transport. It's a very male-dominated industry. Yeah, but that's different for, places like Europe. You have a lot of women working in engineering. It's a normal thing, but also there are these cultural nuances. Every place a girl cannot be an engineer. A girl can do, I don't know, is it medicine, all of those, but there are those cultural things, and it's important to recognize as we are planning, as we are professionals in those different fields, that we model based on similar countries or countries that are facing similar issues, and what works.
Okay, just the next question will be for Emmanuel, and of course Navli can also chat in. But I want to use this quote. You can't. Sorry, I love quotes a lot. So you can't understand a city without using its public transportation system. And so Navli mentioned the road infrastructure. Let's talk about the people that use this road, the users, service quality, because you can have good system, but it doesn't favor the user. So what's the point? So let's go to Emmanuel. Okay, so it's up to you.
Yes, thank you. We want to start, for example, with the case of two-wheelers, or the Okada, as we call it. Yes, that's something. I think that's something you need to be in Africa to really understand what those two-wheelers are really doing, in understanding what the city is all about. That is following from that your quote, but I guess that's something we need to recognize. And also as consumers, what are the impacts of this partnership? That's something we want to explore in terms of their own experience. Because when we talk about partnership, you have the public and the private, they might be enjoying themselves, but how about the customers? Because in my place, they said if two elephants are fighting, it's the grass that will suffer it. So when these arrangements are being made, what are the contexts? What are the, how would I put it, the impact on the consumers? Think about the cost. Think about the price that we have to pay. So if I do a road now, how much do I expect people to be paying to go across the road? Do I think people can really afford it? But also that is where the partners, the public guys might come and say, we need to make our money in 25 years, so we don't really care. And in terms of understanding the needs of the consumers, what are those things that they're able to sort of cut corners because they just want to get things done, and will not really take their time to understand the needs of the consumers in making sure that their needs are very satisfied. So think about it. Some people we might be thinking, why do I need to make a ramp for a disabled person? I will just have one person who is disabled using this place. Why do I need to invest money to spend that money to create a ramp for just one person? And this is something thinking about inclusive designs. Are we just thinking about partnership because we want to make the money and just get this thing for the people, or having that inclusivity in the partnership, saying these are our people, these are the struggles that our people face. You that are bringing this partnership in place, do you understand these struggles? Are you able to develop your own initiative to address the needs of our people? And that is why you want to make sure that when these decisions are being made about this type of partnership, the customers are involved, the commuters are involved. And also, when you say commuters, remember, it's not just the able body. There are many things that makes up these consumers, and that is why I want to recognize that inclusive design. So think about it like as a triangle. You have the private, you have the public, but you also need to have the passengers. You need to make sure they are also involved in this agreement, because often when we just think about PPP, we talk about the private and the public, and everybody knows whose interest they are protecting. So as a private person, I know whose interest I'm protecting, my shareholders. As a public, okay, we might say that I'm protecting the interest of the passengers, but I still think we need to get the passengers involved in this discussion about partnership. So that's just what I've got to say on that for now.
Okay, and before Navi make comments, let me just send this to the audience. So audience, maybe could you just please drop on the chat on the scale of 1 to 10, how often do you use road transport? So just let us know. Let's know that. Let's understand our audience. So Navi, would you want to add to that? So what Emmanuel just said?
Yes, I think a few reactions what Emmanuel has said. I think he's, absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. It's very important that in the planning processes, when we're planning for cities, when we plan cities, human beings live in those cities, and we are trying to move people from point A to B, whether it's to their place of employment, whether it's for schools, education, whether it's for health or any other service. Transport systems are designed to move goods and people. We must understand as professionals, as transport planners, as transport economists, as transport engineers, when we are planning projects, particularly for urban transport systems, people that live in cities, these infrastructures and services are meant for people. So it's very important that as we develop, conceptualize these projects, as we structure these projects and prepare them through the different stages of preparing PPP projects, that really there is a strong strategy on stakeholder engagement from the perspective of including the users of that service. So we would, for example, typically see that when a project is developed and when you eventually have the private party come on board, or actually way even before that, during the feasibility study stage, you would have some sort of survey that underpins the demand for that particular service. And as that feasibility study is being conducted, there can be those interactions with the potential users of that service. And so those kind of elements are the ones that really incorporate the wider public or the targeted users of that service. And it's not only trying to assess their willingness to pay in terms of the potential revenues that can be generated from that project, but also on specifics like what my colleague Emmanuel mentioned in terms of what kind of facilities would they like to see. There should be provision for people in wheelchairs, for example, the ramps on, for wheelchairs and so forth. So these are elements that can be really incorporated in the feasibility study stage, and also early on when the project is being conceptualized. What I've seen in Namibia, we are not very popular with the motorbikes and the tuk-tuks, but we have taxis. We have taxis everywhere, and we also have a in Windhoek, we have a public bus transport system, which is the municipal buses. But for years, it's been underfunded. It's so weird. Namibia, Windhoek particularly, is seen as a city with one of the best infrastructures in Africa in terms of the quality of infrastructure, the cleanliness. I'm not boasting. I'm just saying what I've read. And there's argument here. Kigali stole our shining prize of being the cleanest city in Africa. I think they've now beat us for 2 years because they came up with a campaign to clean their city every month or something. So Windhoek is this well-developed city, town planning proper on point, but our transport system, I cannot stand up in the morning, leave my car and take a bus to work. It's quite unfortunate. The buses are not on time. There is no scheduled routes. Yes, there are scheduled routes, but they are not known. The payment systems. So there are all these host of issues, which I believe could potentially be solved by the public-private partnership. So this is a typical case you have seen in other cities. For example, my city bus in Cape Town. During my time in Leeds, you are in Leeds right now. There's First Bus, for example. There are all these different bus companies that either through a leasing contract or a concessional contract, they have this to operate, pay a certain fee of the revenues to the city, and this improves the quality of the service. This improves not only the type services that they offer, they can vary those services, the route planning, safety aspects also very important, not to forget about safety in not only infrastructure planning, but also in operations. So these are some of the issues that can be addressed. From the public side, how do you ensure that in the PPP contract, you ensure that there are clauses, you set up say, this is the level of safety that we require. This is the on-time service. The service should be delivered on time and it should be reliable. We require provision for blind people, disabled people, elderly. So these are all requirements from the public side that can be built in order to protect the interest of the public.
If I'm also coming on that, I think that is why we need to recognize the benefits of PPP. So the privates are meant to come to enhance and to improve the service of service, and that's one of the advantages of having such proactive and target-driven partners to come on board and really change the service and make sure it's improved. And that's something we need to recognize about the benefits of having this partnership. So the public might just have the infrastructure, but often they will need a partner that has got that mindset of a business, who knows that if I don't deliver, my customer will not come tomorrow. So you want a partner that will come on board and help you change everything and improve the service quality and make sure that people see transportation in this case as something to use. They can afford to leave their car at home because they are sure that yes, they will have a good service.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so now let's come back. I want to talk about the impact of COVID, but let me just pick on your last word. So now we all address that PPP is actually great, but I know that when it comes to collaboration, there are some challenges. So what are these challenges you think are actually maybe a possible challenge they will face, or what measure you think can be put in place to bring all parties together, because they need to work together, because according to the 𝐤𝐳𝐵 17, partnership is key. But bringing it together, it takes a lot. A lot of people. So, what's the take on that?
So So I think your comment is twofold. I think the first part speaks to, how do you sort of, what are some of the pitfalls of PPPs? Yes, we know there are benefits, but we are very well aware that in every situation there are also challenges, right? And so for PPPs to be successful, one of the key things really, and just PPPs in general, not even specific to transport, but transport also has its specific nuances. So maybe I should make it specific. So for transport, you need to ensure that there is a demand. You need to ensure that there is a demand for that particular service, and not only a demand based on estimates that may be hopeful that yes, generally, people require this bus service. But one needs to be cautious also of demand bias, where we have seen, for example, there's a classic case of toll roads that were built in Hungary. It's used in every class, in every academic class, where the government brought in a private party to expand this highway, and the highway was meant to sort of remove congestion on that particular, it's called M41 if I can recall. But then during the feasibility, the consultants projected a higher traffic level than what actually happened in reality. And then what this causes, of course, the revenues that are raised from that project is based on the level of traffic or the demand for that service. So the revenues fell short because the actual demand was way less than what was projected. So a key thing, demand biases, those really need to be checked. Another thing is affordability. Affordability is key. Not just affordability to government, but affordability to the end user. And a lot of the times, when the project is not viable, it will require something called viability gap funding, and it's a form of a government support measure. So government can support PPP projects in different ways. They can provide a guarantee, a sovereign guarantee, to say if the demand is falling lower than the projected demand, then government will come in and then take care of the balance, the difference between that shortfall. The second type of support that government can give, as I said, is viability gap funding, and this can be in the form of a capital grant to say that, okay, we need this bus service for Windhoek, but we see that the city of Windhoek is unable to afford this bus service. But we can see that this PPP model really significant benefit, economic benefits to the city, benefit to the users, benefit to the country. So we are able to give a capital grant to say for the purchase of the buses or the improvement of the bus network infrastructure, the government will contribute a certain amount. And this will make sure that either the annual payments, if it's an annuity payment by the public entity, which is the city in this case, or the fees that will be charged to the end users are then affordable to the end users, because government at the upfront has provided some capital. So these are the type of nuances and issues that typically tend to arise, particularly for transport projects. I think the second point that you mentioned is sort of stakeholder engagement and how you can bring stakeholders on board. Emmanuel spoke initially about political buy-in. Political buy-in so crucial. Projects cannot move without that top approach, So you need to have government develop that PPP framework. First of all, you need some policy or some framework so that all projects are guided through that process, right? So you don't want the bus transport project to be treated differently from the airport project to be treated differently, or so all projects need to go through the same process. And then, of course, that particular public entity that requires that service, they need to have the capacity. They need to be proactive in wanting to implement this project. And then that is how you develop that stakeholder engagement, which identifies stakeholder mapping. Who are the key stakeholders? The users, the public transport unions. Can you imagine if tomorrow they decide to implement a public-private partnership to improve the bus service in Windhoek? What do you think will be the reaction from the taxi unions? because right now taxis account for more than 40% of the public market share, public transport market share in Windhoek, if I'm not mistaken, according to a GIZ study. So what will happen? A lot of the people, if the public buses service improves, a lot of the users will stop using taxis, because now I can take the bus. It's cheaper, it's better, it's safer. So taxis will be losing out. So you need the buy-in from these unions. You need everybody, on the table. So I think those are some of the challenges and the strategies that you can use to mitigate those challenges. Yeah, I've given you a mouthful of thought.
Yes, let me add mine too, so that you can think about it. My main point is actually exploitation. Yes, because this is a partnership, and you will be surprised that some might have an hidden agenda. So I think we need to recognize there's prospect for exploitation. So who is actually initiating this? So who is really working towards this, and what are their hidden agenda? So that's something to recognize. And again, I will also try to retrace the political underpin. Remember, for example, let me talk about Lagos, Nigeria. Politicians will stay maybe 4 years, 8 years. What happens after that 8 years? Will I actually say, no, this is not my party, I need to renegotiate this arrangement? No, you need to settle me. Again, that's something we need to recognize. But we also identify that the benefit of this PPP is to enhance the experience of the commuters, of the passengers. So in all this, we just want to make sure that whoever is arranging this partnership, despite their hidden agenda, despite their whatever they have, they just have to do it in the best interest of the passengers. And also to recognize that passengers are not just one homogeneous group. There are diversity within what we could describe as that passengers, and that's something that they need to recognize. So the PPP in the city will be different from the PPP in the rural area. So that doesn't mean that they don't deserve those infrastructure, but what are those things that are put in place to ensure that irrespective of their location, their experience in using this infrastructure is a positive one?
Okay, yeah. So before I go to my next question, I just want to go to the audience. Nabil, there's two questions for you, but I think they are conflicting. So the question, one of them said, do you think the population size of Namibia of around 2.6 million plays a factor to work? Can you hear me?
Right.
Nabil?
Yes.
However, there's also conflicting question that also says, why have Namibia, they have the best robots when it comes to accidents?
Yes. So Akira, I think this question is not conflicting. I think it's the context of how you read it. So the first person, essentially they are thinking the same. It's just that this question is structured a bit different. So it says, do you think the population size of Namibia of around 2.6 million plays a factor in safe roads? So it's sort of saying there's a safety issue, question mark. So do you think that this 2.6 million plays a factor in safe roads? And the second question, why have the best roads? Why does Namibia have the best roads but top when it comes to car accidents? So it's kind of the similar, or the way I'm understanding it. And I thought these questions would come. And honestly, there needs to be a study done. I'm not sure if there's a study out there, but it's a very interesting question. But there have been public discussions, there's been public discourse in Namibia to try to really understand if we have the best roads in terms of quality. You can, and the other thing about Namibia, which the person mentioned, we are 2.6 million, 2.5 to be exact. That's the or the projected growth since the last census, and 2.5 million, over 800,000 square kilometers of land. So we are 2 people per square kilometer. You can drive from this town to the next town, 200 kilometers. There is no town, clear nature, just you and the open road. And yet, but wildlife though. And yet, we have one of the highest road accident rates in the world and road deaths. So, but this is also per population, right? Per 100, I believe, per 100,000 of the population. So small population, a lot of accidents, and then we come at the top. As I don't have the empirical data, but from what I can draw and conclude, my own opinion is user behavior. As I have used these roads myself, people overtake on blind crest. Namibians also, and I'm speaking for myself, maybe I should not speak for my country on such a big platform, but the patience is sort of here, and if you have, at some points you have a lot of traffic. We have a port at Walfish Bay, which is near the Atlantic coast, and we have transport corridors, one going to Botswana, which is the Trans-Kalahari, and then one going sort of running to the north, coming from South Africa to the northeast, going into the Trans-Caprivi. And so over, let's say 95% of our goods and freight are transported by road, because our rail is currently not the strongest sector. So all the trucks are moving on the roads. Drivers are frustrated at some points. So there's a lot of reckless driving. There's also the wildlife issue. We have a lot of kudus, elands. You should visit and come and see them. They are huge. And in fact, I've also had an incident where I traveled with work somewhere, and all of a sudden, while we are driving, there's a big kudu that just it's sort of like it's like a deer for those people that don't, like Father Christmas and his deers. So it's that big thing that just comes into the road, and you have to grab the steering wheel. So user behavior, wildlife issues, I think those are the biggest contributors. I think I've made my point now.
Yeah.
What are your reactions? What do you think about those? Do your countries face similar issues? Does Nigeria have similar issues in terms of user, like driver behavior? Is there a lot of reckless driving on national roads? What about animals? Are there animal wildlife issues?
Yes, I guess we need to recognize that Lagos alone, which is just like one state, is bigger than your whole country. So I hope that can settle the document.
I can imagine.
So for example, the governor of Lagos State could be the president of Namibia.
Wow.
Yes, it's like your 2.5 million. 2.5 million is even, there is this camp in Lagos, I'm sure. Ibadan Expressway, Redeem, 𝐻𝐿, you can understand. Just one camp on Lagos Ibadan Expressway can take the whole 2.5 million of Namibia.
Yeah, Nigeria is about 22 or 23 million, if I'm not mistaken. That's Lagos, population of Lagos. But
yes,
I think I read a study from Mamata. I think it was in 2018. They said we have about 22 million traffic on the road every day in Lagos. 22 million traffic, yes, daily. Wow. So, like Imana said, Namibia is like
So of course, Nigeria is Africa's most populous nation, biggest market. I think second largest economy there with South Africa and Egypt, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, differences. I really don't know why our traffic is there. I see there's a comment. Yes. So in terms of the road safety management features, traffic management features, and other road competencies to have high car accidents despite the good roads. It could be, but another, I'm just trying to scratch my memory now. We even have traffic cams on the highways, just randomly, but we of course know where they are. We know where they are standing because it's a big yellow pole with a light, like camera. So we even have traffic cams, and that is a measure of safety management, to know that when you are speeding, you can get captured, you get a ticket. Yet people come and drive. Our speed limit is 120 kilometers per hour on the national road. People drive 160, 150, 180, especially these fast cars, BMWs and all of those. So, it definitely requires a study. Who knows? I'm about to start my PhD. Maybe it's something I should look into.
Namibia will really appreciate you for that. But I guess the point is there are huge policy implications here. What is the implication if I go 160 on a 120? For example, maybe if you get captured, would you be expected to pay a fine? Would they collect your license after 3 incidents? So what are those things that can stop people from going over the speed limit?
So, before you answer that, let me just add to that. So I was speaking with someone. She said, just to pay for tickets, speed tickets. I will drive fast and pay the ticket. I'll do it again. So I think it's worth that in a serious study. So you can go on, please make your comments.
I think it's an important point to really bring up. The other thing I forgot to mention is that we have, on occasion, I don't know what their schedule is, but we have actual traffic officers from nearby cities. Let's say you have city A, city B, there's 250 kilometers between. So you have traffic officers from this town, come, let's say 30 kilometers or a quarter way out. And then on the other side, you will have them come a quarter way out, and they actually put a speed trap. And so I think these interventions are mostly around public holidays, when we have Easter and the roads are really busy because the accident rates go up. People are going on holiday, they drive recklessly. But so when we have these speed cams, once you pass there, you are caught. It's like 4,000 Namibian dollars, which is around about, let's say, about 400, 300 USD, somewhere there, US dollars, somewhere there. So how people get fined, they keep tickets, there's payment avoidance. But I know that the police are very, very on top with arresting those that are past the due date of paying traffic tickets. So since we are very small, it's very easy to find you.
Yes, and I think that is where a public-private partnership can come in. So you give the contract to a private person to look for them and get the money for the government. You see? So the government has got their details. You just pass it on to the private company, saying, for every $100 you make, take 80. Just give us 20. So that means they'll be motivated to go out and look for the people. That means they will also stop going over the speed limit because they don't want to pay, because they know that somebody will come and knock at their door and collect this money. So I think there is a plan for a PPP partnership for the private and the public to work together to make sure that people get penalized for going over the speed limits. Think about it.
I don't want the police to come after me here saying, are you trying to outsource our job? But the traffic officers. But they definitely need something to be done, and Namibia cannot continue to occupy that top spot. It's a really topical issue and a very serious issue. People lost lives, and you lose productive citizens, of the country, and it's really a topical issue that needs to be addressed. And I'm sure government, through the Ministry of Works and Transport and through the National Road Safety Council, we have a dedicated Road Safety Council, is doing work, and I should commend them. Every Easter, every December, really we've seen the accident rate come down. Hopefully in the next update of the global statistics, of course their contribution, their reporting lines, I don't know how that reporting, perhaps through this council, it's fed into the World Health Organization, and then the data is calculated there. But hopefully we see a decrease in the accident rates, and then we can see that alignment with the best quality roads and less traffic accidents. But yeah.
Just end of say your next comment. I want to just call your attention to something. Yeah, it's good that they make the fines and everything, but in my opinion, education is important because that is educating the road users. So I did a study on culture. For you to make something the culture, you need to it has to be a mindset. You need to change the mind. You need to like educate and change your thinking that it become a lifestyle. Because most people, you ask them, why do you drive so fast? Why do you do this? Or like, oh, I have something I'm going for, or I have whatever. But if you start educating them about how to the importance of these things, the effect, the long-term effect, how to plan, I think it become a lifestyle. Then they will have to start stop breaking the speed limit or stop causing some road negligence or whatever. So I think education is actually very important. Why we collect the fine, they should also educate the road users.
So you will now get me. You know, I'm just about to start my new role tomorrow as a lecturer in transport management.
Congratulations.
And now you are going to get me to go into the 3 E's of road safety. We are going to forget about public-private partnerships. Because I was about to say, education starts at home, and it is the same for road safety. When you first go to school, your parent holds you or whoever, your guardian, and when you get to the road, they say, look left, look right, is it safe, pass. So it really starts there, and then you instill that, and then throughout school, I think Namibia has gone as far as either we are trying to introduce a curriculum for, I think, road safety and driving or something like that in schools, so that from high school and university, it becomes a culture in terms of how to and being conscious of safety as a society.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to add to that, so forgive me. I just will just say this. Everybody thinks transport is meant for the professionals. No, transport is for everyone. Everyone uses transport. So you should have some basic knowledge. Because talking about achieving this SDG or the climate change or whatever some goals, only the expert cannot do it alone. Every individual have a role to play, no matter how fine that role is. So they need to let them know the importance of transport and have some level of education. So that's actually a good measure, the one you're taking, or is it your school? It's actually a good thing. It's good. I'm sorry. I think we're wrapping up soon. So do you want to add something to that? Then we'll go to our last question. We are already behind.
That's all right. I guess let me just use this time to congratulate him on his new job. Yes. I'm sure. I think you can help change the narrative. You can help change the by education. I think university education is not too late for transport education. So at least
it's
that
not.
could be a place for you to start. I think you need to recognize that people are dying, people's lives have been affected by this. And while the private partnership are doing that thing, perhaps there could be some awareness within the university to also let people know that things needs to change. Things needs to change. And it's been a pleasure hearing your own side of the story, hearing what is going on in Namibia, and perhaps for us to reflect on it. The fact that we are 20 million plus in Lagos doesn't mean that people don't die, doesn't mean that people are not injured. Even when people are so lazy to use the pedestrian bridge, again, there are so many things we need to recognize. But I guess it's all about that intensifying the education, letting people know that it's dangerous out there, you need to take care of yourself, but also to put some kind of responsibilities on the government, on the public and private people or private partners to make sure that these infrastructures are very good. So why would I stop using the pedestrian bridge? Do I feel safe using it? Again, those are some of those things we need to recognize. But that's just all from my side. Thank you so much for this time to have this conversation.
Okay, I know we're already 10 minutes behind time, so forgive me, we'll be wrapping up soon. Just last 2 words on this, because this is actually an important question. So you both mentioned the role of PPP in projects, but you saw how the pandemic changed things. Now nobody's asking for the pandemic in the future, but what role can PPP plan just for some future for future purpose? Anything can happen. Might not be a pandemic, can be something else. So this measure should be foreseen, or plans should be made so that it not just take us unaware. Because I think all industries are already doing that to plan for the unforeseen. So what role can PPP do? I know someone will say let them first do the one that is out and what is existing, not what does not exist. But it's always good to have plans so you can adjust easily. So what's your take on that? Then I think we'll end it there.
Yeah. I think we just
if I may go first. Please, Emmanuel. Yes.
Okay. Yes. I'm just saying we need to think beyond our immediate need. Yes, you don't know what will happen. What are we putting in place to make us sustainable, to make us address that need that might come up anytime soon? I did architecture as my first degree, and they always tell you to design for abuse. You might think this hotel will take 5 people. God help you that day, somebody will bring 7.
Mm-hmm.
How would you really survive? So you want to design for abuse. You don't know what will happen. Make sure that the infrastructures are in place to meet the needs of the people. And you don't know what that need will be, but just have a think big to make sure that yes, everything is in place. Thank you.
Okay. Navi, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think yes, absolutely. I think the COVID pandemic, it's really become critical for governments to, as you said, prioritize and streamline with the needs of the people, the needs of the populations that they serve, especially for developing countries, because we were some of the hardest hit. We did not have access to vaccines. We had to wait for other countries to develop vaccines and to sell some of them, donate some of them. So a lot of the funds that were earmarked for the development of transport infrastructures and the improvement of services, they were diverted to where it was needed the most, which was in the health sector. So a lot of the governments, not only Namibia, but across the continent, are really facing budget constraints, limited resources to be able to pull the sector forward. In terms of, on the supply side, in terms of, operations, provision of services, yes, PPPs have a significant role to play. The partnerships that can be structured, PPPs are essentially a procurement method. It's just a different way of procuring a project as compared to traditional procurement, where either the government does the transport service or the project, infrastructure by itself, as opposed to bringing in a private party, contracting them to provide the service on government's behalf or the infrastructure on government's behalf, and spreading the payment over a longer period, right? And that gives government sort of a gap, so to say, so that they don't need to put up the upfront capital for that, so that they are not so fiscally constrained. So essentially, a PPP is just a method of procurement, and it is a contractual agreement whereby government procures that service, and you can build in safety measures. I saw one of the comments that mentioned that, and I'm diverting a little bit, about the drivers that can be penalized by a driver point reducing system, which I think is an excellent idea. The more penalties you have, the more points are deducted, and then you lose your license at the end. Same thing for PPPs. You can penalize the private party if they are not performing to the standards that the public party sets. These can all be worked into the contract. It's a contractual agreement. And PPPs have a bigger role to play as governments are facing budget constraints. They cannot do it by themselves. Government and the private sector in those respective countries have to come together to drive the development of those countries forward, and particularly for transport, that is the backbone of all economies. Thank you so much.
I want to say thank you to Emmanuel. Thank you so much, and thank you for Nabil for joining us. It's been an interesting conversation, and thank you to our audience for being very engaging. So I want to thank you so much, and please do subscribe to Updated, and have a beautiful evening. Thank you so much once again, our speakers, and enjoy your evening. Bye.
Thank you.